we have an obligation to know the truth. Our Lord says this and tells us this in John 8:32. He says, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Why do you feel impelled to be a traditionalist? Do you think this is a moral obligation, or are you a nonconformist, or is all this just an ego trip or something like that?
As you know, brother, the only argument that the Conciliars had against people like myself, the only argument they have ever had is one against our person. They always bring up the question of our status. Are we in good standing? Which obviously is a diversionary tactic. As if we were the causes of the problem. This is how they divert the attention of the people away from the problem, which we did not cause. The liberals and the modernists and the rebels within the church have caused the problem. We are condemned because we point a finger at what they've done, and because we say what these rebels and revolutionaries don't want what the people need to hear. They want us to be silent. We wish we could be, because it is not a pleasure to be calumniated. It is not a great adventure, but it is our duty, not only for our own soul's sake, but it is our duty toward the people who need someone to articulate their thoughts and to answer their questions. The only thing we ever do is answer the questions in accord with basic Catholic theology. There's absolutely nothing complicated here at all. The problem that people have is that there are too many voices and they don't know which ones to listen to. There are too many people who are speaking and they're not sufficiently versed to put themselves forward. The things that we say are basic, and when the people hear them, they recognize that is what I have been waiting to hear. That's what I've been thinking, but didn't know I was allowed to think it. The service that we render is simply to express, to say out loud what is in the hearts of the people. And we answer the questions which they cannot answer themselves because they have been forbidden both to ask the question and to demand a straight answer.
People would say, in the case of this Pope, John Paul II, that he's such a terrible heretic that there's just no way he could be the Pope.
And we say that the Pope is not impeccable, which is to say, the Pope is not immune from sin. There is not a single sin that the Pope cannot commit. It is extraordinary for the people to be able to witness the Pope committing sin. And they are so taught that when they see the Pope committing a sin, they do not want to believe their eyes. The sin that I'm referring to here is the sin of heresy. Heresy is a sin against the first commandment. The first commandment binds us to orthodoxy of faith. To violate the faith can be either heresy or apostasy. Heresy is in denial of a single doctrine. Apostasy is in denial of all doctrine, of all the doctrines. We are aware that people are horrified when we say that the Pope has pronounced heresy. We're also horrified. We cannot deny it. We can read what he has said. Those who deny it don't realize that they are not being honest. And there's no virtue in this dishonesty. It is a flight. It is a flight from reality, an escapism, because they have been taught and are being taught with constancy and ever greater emphasis that we may not think such thoughts about the Pope. And we have the unpleasant and unpopular task of saying, we have to say it. We have to say it because it is true. We wish we could deny it, and we have gone through all the turmoil and torment of trying to deny it. We cannot deny it. We have to say it. Not because we want to, but because our faith depends upon our finding the truth. Those who say that the Pope cannot do these things do not know the meaning of papal infallibility, nor do they know the limitations of the papal office.
People would agree with you the fact that he is a heretic. The Sedevacantists would agree with you, and therefore they say he cannot be the Pope, as we've stated. And that would be, I guess, basically a misinterpretation or misunderstanding of what the Catholic Church teaches about papal infallibility.
Let us define some words. First, let us define the idea of papal infallibility. The Church is infallible when it teaches a certain doctrine, which is to say that the Church says that God Almighty has revealed to the world through Christ that this statement is true. God Himself has spoken through Christ and said, this statement is true. Nothing that is pronounced as infallible cannot come except from Christ and the apostles, who were personally infallible, who were carefully schooled by Christ. Second, the Church is infallible when it says that a certain act is a mortal sin, and that to die guilty of that sin and impenitent of it means damnation. It is in those two areas that we have to define, specify infallibility. The Pope's infallibility is the Church's infallibility. The Pope is the chief spokesman of the Church. That is why he has infallibility with regard to his teaching office, because the Church expresses this doctrine. The Church has an infallibility in its people, what the people have always believed at all times and places. That is also infallible. And if the Pope in his teaching says something that is contrary to the infallibility that is in the Church, in the people, it has to be recognized and it needs to be pointed out. That is why the people can recognize the errors of the present Pope, because he says what they already know is wrong.
The word Sedevacantism, could you give a definition of exactly what that means?
Among the traditionalists, there is apparently a growing number of priests and lay people who think that the chair of St. Peter is vacant. Their argument is that the Pope cannot be a heretic. They maintain that by virtue of his heresy, John Paul II, if he was validly elected, has lost his position. They quote the Code of Canon Law, which says that one who has an ecclesiastical office and pronounces public heresy incurs ipso facto excommunication. They next say that that excommunication causes him to be out of the church. And if this man is out of the church, then it is impossible that he rule the church, that he have the chair of St. Peter. We emphasize to people that excommunication, if it occurs in the Pope's case, and we will allow that for the sake of the argument. That excommunication does not mean expulsion. Excommunication means that one is not allowed to be or to act in communion with the church.
He is deprived of the sacraments.
He is deprived of the sacraments because he is in a state of mortal sin, and furthermore, because he has done what the code says, that this particular sin brings with it this censure of excommunication. And by virtue of this sin, he is not allowed to act as a Catholic. He has all the obligations of a Catholic, but none of the privileges. And they say that the Pope loses his office. We answer that whether the Pope loses his office because of his public heresy, and there is no doubt that the Pope has committed the sin of public heresy, we say that we are not allowed as the Pope's subjects to do anything about his status.
We can't make a declaration that he has fallen and deposed.
We are not his judges. We can judge for our own sake that a heresy has been publicly pronounced. That is not questionable. That's just a matter of observing what has been said. And we can judge that matter as easily as we can judge the pronouncements of a Protestant minister. If a Protestant minister says something that is contrary to the faith, it's not a moral thing for us to say, well, that's heresy. It does not matter who says it. If it is contrary to the faith, it's heresy. And we have to say it in the case of anyone who says it for our own sake. And as a matter of charity toward our fellow Catholics, we can point it out. And to the extent that those in ecclesiastical offices fail, we have to be the more vociferous. The Sedevacantists go a step further. They not only depose the Pope in their judgment, but they try to bind us to their judgment. They say that they have declared that the Pope has lost his office or never had it. And therefore, we are bound to accept as the only argument and the only valid Catholic position that their position must be ours. And we say it is not our right as the subjects to the Pope to pronounce him deposed.
And make a private judgment.
Our position is that Sedevacantism is intrinsically anarchistic. Anarchism means that you argue yourself into a mentality of total lawlessness. Sedevacantism, in deposing the Pope, says that the church has no head, and we have a right to say that the church has no head, and therefore the church has no one to preside over it. The people have no one to look toward in any respect. The only consequence is that The total legal structure of the church is either threatened, or it is violated, or it is destroyed. That is the result of anarchism. We have to be convinced that in establishing the church and in giving it the attributes of indefectibility, we have to be certain that not even the Pope himself can destroy the church by either his sins or his heresies, his scandals, or his deficiencies, his defects. Not even the Pope can render the church altogether impotent.
And this goes back to a misunderstanding again of that issue of papal infallibility, because they said if it's true that he's infallible whenever he speaks on faith and morals, which we know is not true, then the gates of hell have prevailed against the church because there is no head.
That's what they say. They want to insist that there is a question here between immunizing the Pope of any heresy, or the church is not indefectible. They want to present this as a dilemma.
Because he's so bad.
And we say that heresy is a sin against the first commandment. The Pope can err in matters of doctrine and morality personally. And when he does so, he commits a grievous sin. He may incur the censure. But the church has not been destroyed by his doing so. He has fallen into sin, and he has abused his authority, but he does not lose his place as the Pope. That is our argument.
Well, Pope Martin V also said, quote, "It is an error to believe that if the Pope were wicked and reprobate, then he is of the devil and not head of the church militant." So as far as him sitting in that chair and being Pope, the position of Pope, he is that. But the thing doesn't have anything to do with whether he's good or bad.
We say there are two ways in which the Pope can lose his office. One is that he abdicate, and the other is that he go to God. Abdication means he can resign. The other is that God take him. We, his subjects, can recognize his heresy and keep clear of it. We can even expose his heresy to others for their sakes. And the higher the person's place in the church, the greater his obligation to denounce the Pope in his heresy. But he cannot slough off his authority.
People make the distinction between the ordinary and extraordinary magisterium. They make a big deal of this. The fact they say, or claim to say, that the ordinary magisterium is infallible. The thing is but they cannot teach contrary to what the Catholic faith has always taught.
Whether we are talking about the ordinary or the extraordinary magisterium, the magisterium is nothing other than the church teaching us. That is what the church does. The church was established by Christ to teach us. The ordinary magisterium is the daily exercise on the part of the church of instructing and guiding us, telling us what we must believe, teaching us Catholic doctrine. The extraordinary magisterium is when the church, with an unusual gesture, such as through a council or through an ex cathedra statement, teaches us. We're bound no less by either the ordinary or the extraordinary magisterium. We're bound no less because what we're bound by is Catholic truth. It does not matter the method. It is the matter. The matter is what binds us.
Now, as far as I wanted to bring up the issue between are all councils, people claim that all councils by Pope, that's head up by Pope, are infallible.
All councils are infallible to the extent that the Pope makes them infallible. The councils meet, that is, the bishops come together and discuss and debate, and they pronounce by way of decrees. It is necessary for the sake of the Church to make these declarations a part of its magisterium, that the Pope validate or ratify these deliberations. There has never been a council, a general council, until the Second Vatican Council, which did not have the purpose of gathering in order to deliberate on doctrinal matters. The Second Vatican Council was unique in that at the very outset, Pope John the 23rd said that this would be a different kind of council. He coined an altogether new expression. He said this is a pastoral council.
Yeah. And Pope Paul VI also declared that on January the 12th, 1966. He said this was not.
That's right. And people need to understand that anything that this council pronounced that is a part of Catholic tradition and belief is no less true and no less binding. They also need to understand that in calling itself a pastoral council, the Church, or let us say the council, was telling the Catholic faithful that our deliberations will not be mainly on the subject of what is Catholic doctrine. Our deliberations will be mainly regarding how the Church will approach the faithful. And the council said that we are going to begin to approach the people in a different style.
So Father, not to interrupt you, but things with that would deal with the sanctifying area, not the teaching area.
No, it would not even deal with the sanctifying area.
Okay.
We have to say that rather remarkably, the Second Vatican Council was rather unconcerned about the sanctification of the people. The Second Vatican Council was mainly concerned with its image, with how the people saw or see the Church. The second aspect of this matter is that the Church was going to present a new image to the non-Catholic world. It was going to make a totally different approach to the non-Catholics, the non-believers. No matter whether they were Protestants or Jews or Mohammedans, but to non-believers, the Church was going to present itself not as an infallible body, but as an equal, and the Church was going to present itself as being like them, searching for the truth. This is a horrendous aspect, and very often, since then, ecclesiastics, including the Pope, have suggested that we Catholics are searching for the truth. We're not searching for the truth at all. God has given us the truth. God has imposed the truth on us. And those who do not possess it are bound under the pain of damnation to find it and to accept it. We are in a totally different situation from those outside the Church. We have access to the truth. We know where it is, and we're bound by it. And any Catholic who does not know the truth should find someone who does know it and listen to him. And if there's any priest that doesn't know it, that priest should leave the priesthood. He has no business presenting himself as a priest if he does not know his Catholic theology.
This view of the Church, then, what we see is what was entailed in the Second Vatican Council. I mean, that view of the Church is what we see being played out now by the Pope, the bishops, and...
No, that's right. The Church since the Council has been willing to discard everything that is recognizably Catholic in order to fulfill this new preoccupation of presenting itself in a different fashion to the Catholic lay people and to the non-Catholic world. And for the sake of having a different image to the non-Catholic world, it has shown itself indifferent to the faith of the people, so that the people are beside themselves with confusion. They no longer find anything recognizably Catholic. They don't know what to do in reaction. It is as if they simply no longer recognize their mother. She has taken on a totally new makeup and garb and a way of speaking. They don't recognize her, and in their heart of hearts they know this is a false image, and they're scandalized by it. But all those to whom they look for explanation assure them that they're not to be dismayed, that they're not to take scandal, that they're not to take umbrage. And it is the role of us who are traditionalists to say, don't listen to them. They are liars and deceivers. You have every reason to be scandalized by this new approach.
They're saying don't go against the grain, don't go against the way things are going right now.
And we say to these Catholic people, you listen to your Catholic heart. You listen to the voice of God within you. And if you are confused, that is a wholesome sign. If you are disturbed, if you are horrified, or if you are scandalized, that is a true Catholic reaction. And you're to act on it. You're not to staunch it or smother it. You are to react according to it.
So this view of the church has really overridden everything, all the dogmas of the church. It's this view of the church that is the whole center and focus of the Conciliar Church right now.
In order to present a totally new image to its people and to the world, the Conciliarists have been willing to discard everything. And that is not a careless statement. There is absolutely nothing that they will not concede to fulfill this image, to carry this out. There is absolutely nothing. Not a single doctrine will they not compromise. They will discard not only the Mass, they will discard any appearance, any external, any morality, in order not to present themselves to the church, or let us, I beg your pardon, in order not to be inconsistent with this self-imposed obligation of being ecumenical, of being all things to all men. There is nothing that they will not discard. There's no damage they will not do. There's no fixture they will not destroy. There is nothing holy they will not trample. Even the body of Christ. There is absolutely nothing they will not do in order to fulfill this self-imposed image. And they have said, in order to give weight to their resolve, that the Holy Spirit has guided them to it. This is false. The Holy Spirit has guided them to nothing of it. We have every reason to know what spirit it is that has guided them to this.
Well, we see two diametrically opposed opposites in here. We had the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass that brought the new Mass, and all these new things in the new view of Vatican Council II now being imposed and implemented and standard everywhere. This is the glorification, the deification of man, and God has been taken from his Father.
That is exactly right, because they have made the reception of human beings, or the acceptance of human beings, to be the norm for what the church is. Not what Christ has established, not what Christ has taught, not the Ten Commandments, not the traditions, nothing that has been established is the norm which the conciliarists want the people to have. The norm is what the people want. And what is it that the people want? They want what the Judeo-Masonic media have taught them to want. They're the total playthings of the media, which are controlled. And the Conciliar Church now comes to them to say that what you want is what we are here to be. Not what God requires, not what Christ has established, but what you want is what we are here to be.
Well, that's what they did. They also, after the Second Vatican Council, they got the nuns out of their convent, they got the priests out, contemplative order, religious orders, and they said, you got to get involved with the people. Get involved with the people. You have to go out and be of service to man. Well, this isn't really a true, in God's eyes, service to man, is it?
Obviously, none of this takes into consideration the one thing necessary. The one thing necessary is that the people become holy. They not only must be Catholic, which is to say they must not only be orthodox in their belief and moral in their demeanor, they must do this to a perfection. And nothing that the Council has attempted in the Conciliar Church, nothing that has been introduced, no change or innovation, nothing has had the purpose to make the people holy. And only if the people are holy is there any chance of their being saved. That is the essential negative and the essential missing parts of the whole conciliar revolution. That there is no concern about the condition of the souls of the faithful, nor is there any concern about the condition of those outside the church. No concern whatsoever, but rather a total obsession with pleasing the people in their incomplete, their sinful, and their worldly way of thinking.
This is completely unorthodox, and this conciliar view of the church, in a way, this theory and belief in universalism, that all men will be saved, this is completely a total opposite of what our Lord says in Matthew 7:13, that broad is the way that leadeth to hell, and straight and narrow is the gate that leadeth to life, and how few there are that find it. And besides that, what the saints, popes, and doctors of the church have stated on the fewness of the people that are saved. Now, all of a sudden, this whole view of the church is that everybody's saved, honor to man, and a glorification of man, service to man, without becoming holy, like you're saying.
This is the dominant and undeniable goal of the new religion in the church. That on the one hand, it is regardless of the condition of the people's souls, and on the other, it is forgetful of the eternal destiny that every man has. The Conciliar Church has no room in its consideration for the judgment, for the afterlife, and for heaven and hell. There is no idea of these realities in the conciliar approach.
It would not be then unbelievable, seeing the way the church is going, and seeing the way the Pope is, and the way he believes, it's obvious, to possibly hypothesize that he may indeed be part of a conspiracy, possibly.
We simply are forced to say that his manner seems calculated. his language is curious and inconsistent. That occasionally he says some Catholic faith. Now and then he seems to take a stand. And because he does this occasionally, people are gratified. And they even say that he is conservative. And people from our viewpoint, or let us say people in our position, say the Pope should never say anything but what is Catholic. The Pope should be the most ardent, the most articulate, and the most extreme of Catholics. That he should be the most cautious of all Catholics in his pronouncement. That there shouldn't be a single sentence that he ever pronounces or writes that is not thoroughly recognized by Catholics. He is the least speculative of all the Catholics. Other Catholics may venture into certain areas for the sake of further insight. But the Pope has the duty of saying only that which is undeniably Catholic, and which is strictly traditional and well established.
And that would be so important because he is, as we know, the head of the church, and people are seeing these things. And as we said, these kinds of actions are leading souls, and we could say possibly millions of souls, to believing in these pernicious errors and heresies, and at the cost of their eternal salvation. So we're not dealing with something, we're not dealing with men, we're dealing with eternal realities, like we said before.
We can see that the cardinals and the bishops and the priests are doing, generally speaking, what they say we're supposed to do. They are staying with the Pope, regardless of what he says. They never call his hand. They never raise their voices. Many of them know very well that what the Pope is saying and doing is horrendous. Many of them do that. And there's no denying it. By their failure, they make themselves a part of his crime. And most certainly, it is a matter of heaven and hell. We are going to be saved through our orthodoxy. The idea is very widespread that the ordinary Catholic does not have to be concerned with what he believes. Because in our present era, in the present situation, the bishops and the priests are so unorthodox that the people have the notion, well, surely they're going to be saved. And I don't have to be the stickler that they're supposed to be. If they're going to be saved when they're so indifferent to dogma, surely I'm not going to suffer because I know less and I am less unusual than they.
So there are really two camps that you can go into at this point, seeing the way the church is, at least the Conciliar church. Either you can go into the camp of believing what the church has always believed, or believe this new type of religion that has been established and imposed by the Conciliar church, by the popes and everyone who's in it.
There has always been an alternative. And the alternative is either orthodoxy or heresy. In other days, people could look to the hierarchy for guidance. In our day, that is exactly where they cannot look. Now they have to go to the books. Now they have to find out for themselves. Or they have to listen to those who are speaking the tradition, who are speaking what the good books say. and they have to attach themselves to those people, few as they may be.
Many of the apparitions that we see, almost all of them, in fact all of them that I know right now, outside of Our Lady Vakita, Fatima, La Salette, these apparitions, and there are multitudes of them, the message is a constant one. You are a Catholic if you stay united with this Pope. Stay united with the Pope. Stay united with the Pope. Stay united with the Pope.
That is all the proof one needs that the apparition is false. That by itself, regardless of all the other conditions and faults that we can find in these so-called apparitions. Any apparition that has the Catholic people being directed to follow recognizable, undeniable heretics is not a valid and authentic apparition.
But they're saying that this is Our Lady's Pope. But that would be that's a total contradiction right there.
We just have to say again that the Pope has done and said too many heretical things. Our Lady would never say a thing like that. Our Lady surely prays for the Pope for his return to orthodoxy, if he were ever orthodox in his mind. She surely prays for him. If anyone says anything to the contrary, he just makes his own obligation more difficult.
So, but at the same time, you have studied, obviously, and read John Paul II's writings. We've seen what he's done. Don't we have not only an obligation, but a right to know exactly what this man thinks very clearly, because it's almost impossible to understand what he really believes by looking at what he's written so far.
We have to tell the Catholic people that we regret very much having to tell them these things. We are as sorrowful to say it as they are to hear it. But it is the truth. We cannot deny the truth any more than we can deny the ruin that this is causing, nor the confusion and perturbation it is causing in their souls. They can fly in the face of the truth, and they can listen to the priests who are denying what we say, but they'll never have any peace.
Well, they're saying it's all a matter of interpreting, and you're interpreting incorrectly.
And I would say that if they want to say that, they're solving no problem for themselves. And they have an obligation then to take the writings of John Paul II and analyze them. It is not an easy thing. Father Malachi Martin has remarked that he believes he has read everything that the Pope has written. And he is totally confused by what the Pope said. I have not read nearly that much of what the Pope has said. But I find no difficulty in observing heresy in many of his lines. The Pope is a very difficult man to understand. But there is no denying, on the one hand, that everything he says should be recognized in the Catholics. The Pope has no business being original. He was not appointed by the Church and by Christ to be a speculative theologian, and this is putting the best face on it. The Pope's duty is to be our teacher. And as our teacher, the Pope misleads us. But much worse, the Pope's personal philosophy and theology is by no stretch of the imagination Catholic.
So he's obviously not really Catholic at all. St. Augustine says one who denies a single doctrine of the Catholic faith is not Catholic.
He's a heretic.
So the thing is, here's the distinction that the Sedevacantists have not made. The fact that he is indeed a heretic, something to do with him sitting in his position?
About the Sedevacantists, I cannot help but believe that these individuals have a certain rebellious nature, and that they are finding a reason in the Pope's scandal to slough off authority. It is not unnoticeable that a number of them have arranged to become bishops. It is very questionable whether any of these men would ever have been named or called to the episcopacy, but they have found a way, a certain number of them, to become bishops. And it is very difficult for us not to believe that there is not a little personal ambition in this.
That they've made this whole issue everything. Everything depends upon this.
That is right.
They
have made their judgment of this matter a doctrine which must be believed. They have made it something that must be accepted and something that we cannot oppose. They have decided that they are going to impose their judgment on us, and there is something wrong with our faith if we do not see it in their way.
Now, Father, could you explain one of the things they do within the Mass is take you out praying for the Holy Father?
This is how they implement their view of the problem. Once having declared that Pope John Paul II is not the Pope, they, when they say Mass, do not include his name. Not to include the name of the Pope in the Mass is an act of schism. No priest has the right to alter the rite of a Mass. This is why we condemn the new Mass. And we condemn as a mortal sin any priest saying a new Mass. It is a departure from the Mass that he's supposed to say. In the case of the Sedevacantists, they make this not small departure. They, on their own, omit the name of the Pope, which the rubric requires that they include. The rubric requires that they pray for the Pope. When they refuse to pray for Pope John Paul II, they are renouncing their obedience to him. They declare that they must do this in order not to participate in his heresy. We say that their private judgment of the matter must not be introduced into the liturgy, which is an official act of the Church. Their private judgment has no place in the sacred liturgy.
Could one attend their Mass, though, as far as, being that as a man?
One can attend their Masses, provided that they do not require that those who do attend indicate in some way their conformity or their accord with their personal view.
They don't make them adhere to this.
That's right. If, for instance, any of these Sedevacantists, priests or bishops, were to require that those in attendance sign a paper that they do not accept John Paul II as their Pope. If they require that, then the Catholic must not attend that Mass. Otherwise, he may do so. And on a Sunday, if this is the only Mass that he has available to him, he must do so.
Being that they're schismatical because of this, obviously anyone that is in schism is on the road to hell. Am I not right?
Schism also is a mortal sin. Schism is a violation of the fourth commandment, because we are bound to be obedient to those in authority over us. We're bound to be obedient to John Paul II in those matters in which he has authority.